Good afternoon and welcome to the Be Mobile Show. It's Brody and Alicia with you. Hello to any of our members and online exercise participants joining us. If you're new to Be Mobile, we are physiotherapists and experts in all things health and fitness for adults 55 plus.
That's right, we are based on Sydney's Northern Beaches where we see clients, but we also have an online exercise program and have members from all around the world.
And our mission is to transform the community's approach to aging. So we do that by providing effective and accessible exercise and education to help everyone 55 plus be fit and strong and capable of living life on their terms.
Yes, indeed. So, Brody, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about disc bulges, and in particular, disc bulges related to the lumbar spine, but other findings related to lumbar spine conditions as well. So we're going to shed a little bit of light on that. But say hello in the comments, let us know where you're watching from. If you have an experience with lumbar disc bulges, low back pain, if you're comfortable sharing anything about that in the comments. And of course, any questions. We've got a couple of questions already planned, but we'll get to any others in the comments if we can. And if not, that can be something we'll discuss in more detail next week, because we do these live shows every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Sydney time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let us know in the comments if you have been diagnosed with a disc bulge or have any questions. And now we're going to get into the research, aren't we,
Yes.
Brody? So we've got a really interesting table to have a look at.
And just before we jump in, I'll just say, let us know if the audio's okay, if you're hearing us okay. People who've been watching the last few weeks will know we've had some audio issues. We think we've mostly solved it, so let us know. I can already see Zahira, Val and Karen all saying hi in the comments, so thanks for joining us.
Well, that means they can hear us, so that is a good sign.
And Ollie's jumping in saying the sounds is good so far as well, so great. All right, disc bulges, Alicia, let's get into it.
So the thing with disc bulges is that a lot of people that don't have any back pain or any symptoms present with disc bulges on imaging, don't they?
Yes, and this study we're going to talk about from 2015. If you've been with us for a while, you've probably heard us discuss this before. It's something that personally was a radical shift in my understanding as a physiotherapist, because it wasn't something I was aware of or talked about while I was going through university. And seeing this really changed how I think about back pain and disc bulges and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so
let's
have a look at this table. So as you can see on the left-hand side, there is a list of common imaging findings.
Yeah.
So things like disc degeneration, disc bulge, disc protrusion, facet degeneration. And as we go across to the right-hand side, we have age going up in years per decade.
So you can see that for all of these findings, they are much more prevalent as the years go on. So every decade of life, these findings are increasing in prevalence. If you take something, well, we're going to highlight a couple of them in a moment. So you might say, okay, well, that's all well and good. These lumbar spine findings increase year on year. So what? The thing about this study is every single one of these people had no back pain at all. No back symptoms, no back disability, no back problems. These are perfectly healthy, happy people with zero low back complaints, and these MRIs were done. So all these findings are extremely prevalent, even in their 20s. If you look at that far left column of people in their 20s, we're looking at 30%, 17%, 24, 30, 29. Even by then, these sorts of things.
So quite high percentages. You're looking at, you know, they're like 29%, a third of people, age 20, have disc protrusion.
Yeah, which is a severe kind of disc bulge, the more significant kind of disc bulge. So all of these findings, super, super prevalent in people across all years of life, increase with age, and these are people with no pain at all. I'm going to bring up this second graph just to highlight a bit more visually 3 of the key points. And in here, we've just separated out the 50, 60, and 70 age brackets, because that's what the vast majority of our members are. There might be some a bit younger and a bit older, but that's the sort of the core of most of you watching are probably in those age ranges. Disc degeneration. 80% of people in their 50s and increases the next 2 decades. Again, people with no pain. Disc bulges, 60% and increasing. So 2/3 of people over 50 have lumbar disc bulges and no pain. And facet degeneration, which is basically arthritis or arthritic changes along the joints either side of the spine. We've got these little facet joints at every level. And again, you can see that 30% and increasing to well over 60% in people in their 70s.
Yeah. So like you, Brodie, when I was exposed to this research, it did cause quite a radical shift in the way that I viewed low back pain in particular, because at university, like you, I was taught that we would attribute pain to a specific physical source. But all of this very robust research conducted in very large quantities of people shows us that symptoms correlate poorly with imaging findings.
Yeah.
And also that these findings are very prevalent, and we perhaps need to change the way we view them, and rather than calling them abnormalities, perhaps instead calling them age-related findings.
Yeah, and sometimes we've referred to these things as wrinkles or grey hairs on the inside. They're just a normal thing that happens to the human body as it progresses through its years of life, but is not necessarily a bad thing. We don't think of wrinkles as being some profound problem with your skin. It's just a normal thing that happens through the years of your life. So that's how we want to think of a lot of these things, rather than being so blamed or thought of as something that's a serious medical problem. Now, why does this all matter? Well, firstly, these things are somewhat correlated with pain. So it's not that there is no relationship between disc bulges and pain. In people with back pain, they are a bit more likely to have disc bulges when we scan them. What's very typical is someone will have back pain, they'll go get an MRI or CT scan done, and the scan will read much like this graph shows, as you can expect. Say a 50 or 60-year-old gets a scan of their back, all of these things are going to show up. And so they naturally assume, okay, that the worst looking one, the disc bulge or the disc protrusion, is why their back hurts. But what's important to understand is those bulges and protrusions and things were probably there long before the pain started, and will probably be there long after the pain goes away, because typically low back pain does not last forever. It usually gets much better within the first 6 weeks or 12 weeks. Yes, sometimes it can become more chronic, but the key thing to understand is what's structurally happening in the spine is not a strong predictor of how much pain someone will or won't have.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to take one thing away, and you know, forget about the graphs, the one piece of information you need to know is that your symptoms can change regardless of what is found on imaging. So whether if you have a disc bulge and you have back pain, your back pain can reduce without that imaging finding changing.
Yeah. Some other more interesting research that we're not going into as much in depth today, but is the fact that these disc bulges and things heal as well.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Around 2/3 of them just spontaneously heal on their own within a couple of years, regardless of any medical intervention or otherwise done. So it's really key to understand they are not strongly linked with pain. You don't have to have the disc bulge go away for your pain to go away, but often the disc bulge goes away anyway. So whatever angle you want to come at this from, hopefully you're seeing that the disc bulge itself is something to not be so afraid of or worried about. What matters more is your current symptoms, what you're dealing with, and how you can overcome that, because back pain is hugely prevalent. It's the leading cause of disability worldwide. 80 to 90% of people will experience at least one significant bout of back pain in their life. So we're not downplaying how serious and disabling back pain is. We're just downplaying how much you need to worry about what the scan shows. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I'll jump in and have a little
comments?
look
have a little
at the
look
comments.
if there's any comments or questions.
So lots of people saying hi. We won't respond
Hello.
to every one of you, but thank you all for joining. Yeah, people saying the sound is good, audio is clear, lovely. No specific questions yet.
Okay, well, we do have a question from Carmel.
Yes.
Which relates...
This is one that came in earlier today.
I should say this is, submitted a disc bulge.
Yeah.
So Carmel says, I have never experienced pain like I did recently from a severe L4-5 disc bulge, and I never want to experience it again. While I am motivated to do whatever it takes to prevent a recurrence, I'm also very tentative to do anything that might cause a relapse. I have been doing squats and overhead press, but am concerned about bent over exercises like deadlifts. Yeah. I would appreciate a discussion on how to get back to weight exercises apart from go low and slow. Yeah. So, which is a slogan that we use all the time.
So start low, go slow still does apply, and we're going to give you more of an answer, Carmel, don't worry.
We'll give you more context.
But that is true for pain from a disc bulge and any other pain is we want to try and get back to activity, your normal activity, not just exercise, but your normal life activity as well, social work, etc. But yes, you want to start low and go slow and ease into things and let your body time to adjust and recover.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, we're going to give you more of an answer than that. Firstly, this is, as Carmen has described, is the case of someone with a symptomatic disc bulge. And again, we're not saying that that is impossible. Of course, some disc bulges are very much associated with pain and can be very painful. Nothing we've said today denies that as being a realistic thing that of course does happen. All right, on to Carmel's question, advice, Alicia. What can we tell her?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say, Carmel, that your experience is very common and just validate how disabling it can be and also quite scary. You know, I think I've tweaked my back a number of times. You know, I know you've experienced that too, Brody. And when you're in it and your back pain is limiting what you're able to do, you know, finding it difficult to put your shoes on, and that when you talk about the bending over and finding the deadlift movement in particular, again, that can be a common aggravating movement. So we understand from personal experience and also in a lot of the clients that we've seen just how tough it can be to go through this. But there is definitely hope that your symptoms will resolve, and we're going to talk you through how you can work up to building up your exercise.
So starting with exercise, the first message is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what we mean by that in this context is don't assume all exercise is bad or impossible just because some things are problematic. We can't always guarantee exactly which movements or exercises will be hard for someone with low back pain because it does vary. But you may find certain exercises you were doing previously are just intolerably painful at the moment. That's okay. We can avoid those exercises for now while not believing that exercise overall is damaging or dangerous. So the key is to find what exercises you can tolerate, do more of those, focus on those positives and making progress in those areas, while for now putting aside any exercise that is too provocative or painful.
Yeah. So when it comes to the deadlift, when we say go low and slow, which is, you know, a pithy slogan we like to use, an example with, or to be more specific with the deadlift, is rather than picking up something off the ground, like a weight, you could even just do an unweighted movement that is similar to the deadlift by putting your hands on your thighs and sliding them down just as far as is comfortable. You might get to your knees or to your thighs, you might get a little bit below your knees, and you can start slowly working towards doing that movement and getting more comfort with it.
Yeah, so literally just standing up, you'll just be able to see me a little bit, but just as Alicia was describing, just working on starting with that bowing motion. And it can be as low as that to start with, just starting to get a little bit more comfort, starting to trust that your back can handle that load. When we have a lot of pain, we often feel very sort of fragile or vulnerable. It feels like any movement for the back could cause something really catastrophic to happen. And despite that feeling, it's just not really true. Even when you've got a symptomatic disc bulge, the spine is a really thick, strong, robust structure with big, thick ligaments, lots of muscles, surrounded by muscles. It's actually a lot safer to move it than you might think, even when it feels really vulnerable. But you don't want to go crazy. You do want to start low, go slow. Sorry, we keep using it, but it's true. And yeah, just starting with a gentle movement like that, eventually you can start to add a little bit of weight. You could hold 1 kilogram, 2 kilograms in your hands, and again, just start to repeat that bowing forward, coming back up motion as a way of building up to getting comfortable lifting a weight all the way off from the floor.
That's right. Yep, so there's a tangible example of how to progress that movement in particular. But if, for example, that is just, your back is so sensitive to that movement and it is so aggravating, as Brody said, you can take that movement out for the time being and focus on other exercises like you're doing at the moment with your squats and your overhead press and things that are tolerable before reintroducing it.
Now, another thing that might help when you're dealing with low back pain in terms of getting back to exercise is doing a more deliberate, specific warm-up for your lower back. those of you who are our members who do our workouts know that we always start with a sort of general warm-up of a few movements, 5 minutes or so to get the body moving a little bit. But maybe if you're dealing with a current pain or injury, before you even start that general warm-up, you might do a few more things specifically for your back just to get a little bit more comfortable with movement. Exactly what you do probably isn't important, but anything just getting that lower back area moving is a good start. You could start with sitting in a chair and just doing some rotations. Twisting, working on rotating the spine. You might, in a seated position in a chair, do some gentle reaching forward, down to your toes, coming back up, something like that. You might progress to then doing that standing. Twisting standing, toe touches standing. You might do some squats. You might lie down on the floor and do some bridges, so driving your hips up off the floor. Those are just some examples, but anything moving that lower back and that hip region can be a good way just to get it a bit more extra warmed up before you then get into your exercises.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions?
Definitely.
Any other things you think of that?
No, I think that's good. And I was just thinking when you were describing that, Brodie, that, you know, like how much our bodies love to move, and that sometimes getting moving can, especially in a very gentle way like that, can actually provide some pain relief, as opposed to not moving, when then we become that an area such as our lower back, which is already in pain, can then become more sensitive. And the movement also sends messages to our central nervous system that, oh, actually, this movement is safe to do. Yeah.
And lastly on that, it can be a really good way of just gauging where you're at physically. You might feel in too much pain to do a workout, but start with a warm-up like that. Maybe it really isn't feeling very good and you go, that's okay, I've done 5-minute warm-up and that's my movement, that's my exercise for today. Or you go, it's actually feeling a bit better than I thought now that I've got moving. I can go on to more of a full workout.
Yeah, it's like a litmus test. Yeah.
Last thing to answer Carmel's question is recognize and understand that the temporary increases in pain is just part of the recovery journey, part of getting back to doing your normal things. You will have some increases in pain when you're trying to exercise with pain. That's part of it, that's normal, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're doing more damage, it just means you're sensitizing an area that's already sensitive, as Alicia talked about with that sort of central nervous system, signaling, sensitizing, whatever you want to call it. That's part of the journey, but overall the exercise and movement is good, and to keep reminding yourself of that even when it's not feeling the best.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay, great. I'm going to have a look through the comments to see if there's anything else we can address, Alicia.
Okay, and remember, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button, and any comments, any questions, pop them in.
Great. Okay, here's a couple of questions we can answer quickly, Alicia.
Okay.
This one from Elizabeth says, as I'm doing the housework, decluttering, etc. around the house, I get this pain in the middle of my upper back between my shoulder blades. I have to sit down for about 10 minutes and it typically goes away after resting.
Okay.
What do we think about that?
Doing housework.
Housework, decluttering, chores, things like that. So it builds as you're doing physical activity, and then rest helps it to go away. To me, that's indicating it's probably a sign of the muscles of your upper back response to asking them to do a lot that maybe they're not as prepared for. So even though you might do this kind of chores and housework regularly, you're kind of pushing them to their limit a little bit in terms of strength and endurance. So those muscles are fatiguing, they're feeling tight, they're signaling to your brain that they're, under stress, that they're being worked, and that they're maybe, reaching towards the limits of what they can comfortably handle. And that tells you to, sit down, rest, allow those muscles a bit more time to recover, and then everything settles down and your brain goes, okay, we're okay. Agree with that? Does that sound like maybe what would be going on?
So I think the way that you're currently managing it by having those rest breaks when you need is a great strategy. And the other thing is that you can also work on building up the tolerance of those muscles.
So that's going to be the long-term solution.
That's the long-term solution, building up the tolerance by doing strength training for your upper body and doing a whole variety of strengthening movements that will hopefully in time increase the duration which you're able to do your housework with without feeling that sensation.
So it's not an immediate fix, but doing exercise to build strength in that area will help. And Elizabeth might ask, well, if I do this sort of regular housework every week, why isn't that enough to build up the strength? And the answer is typically it's just not within the sort of, it's a long complicated answer, but it's not within the parameters of sort of optimizing how much you can get stronger and fitter. So a regular, structured, repetitive strength program, ideally done twice a week or more, will get you far more benefit than just the housework sort of activity itself. We could talk for hours about that.
Yeah.
We won't, but that's, ongoing strength training would help, Elizabeth.
Indeed.
Here's a question from Beryl I'll bring up. I hurt my back in my 30s with sciatica, absolute agony. I was out of action for weeks and still have discomfort. However, I do strength training 3 times a week and I've been found keeping active works for me. That's great. Thanks for sharing, Beryl. And yes, that's true. That's what the research shows, is that being fit and strong and active long term is the best thing you can do. But we sort of don't view back pain as one specific injury or moment anymore. It's more sensible to talk about it as like a recurring thing through someone's life that will come and go. So Beryl's description of that and still having discomfort at times is totally normal and realistic with this sort of back pain.
That's right. That's right. Thanks for sharing that, Beryl.
Carmel says, at the time I had pain, I couldn't sleep, sit and barely walk. I'm pain-free weeks after an epidural steroid. I've been doing what you suggested and will keep at it. Good on you, Carmel.
Okay.
Keep at it.
Good on you, Carmel. You will get there.
Yes, you will. And it's great that you're like weeks later you're pain-free, and that's really good. Epidural steroid, if the pain is quite severe and you're struggling to cope, as Carmel said, couldn't sleep, couldn't sit, could barely walk, that's a sign to seek medical attention, to see if something like that can be done to help with your pain. We don't routinely recommend that for everyone with back pain, but it's a case-by-case decision for the doctor and medical team, etc. Lovely. Moving on.
All right. Okay.
Just see if there's any others. Gay said, I sent through a message, RE tennis elbow. Not sure if that's in the queue. That's not one we're going to get to today, but
that is not.
No,
but we will look at that for next time.
We'll look into that, Gay, and we'll add that to the roster for next week. Thank you. Elizabeth said, thanks. That makes sense. Dun, dun, dun. Karen said you can't see Elizabeth's comment. That's because this video is going to our Facebook page as well as to YouTube. So you might be watching on YouTube or the Facebook page, in which case you might not see each other's comments necessarily. So there you go. That's your answer to that. Good. Okay.
All right. So we have another pre-submitted question from Denise, who says, I have been doing the Be Mobile program since October 2021. Fantastic, Denise. And believe that I have had good results in relation to my bone density. A recent DEXA scan showed an increase of 1.2% in the left femoral neck, so that's your hip, but a similar decrease in the lumbar spine. Are there specific exercises that I can add to strengthen the spine area?
Yeah, so Denise asked this in a comment on one of our videos and I responded, but I wanted to share it here as well because people might be interested in hearing this. So in the research on exercise for bone density that we have, that is a common trend where the hip bone density is the more likely to increase significantly and the lumbar spine maybe stays the same, maybe a bit worse, maybe doesn't increase as much. So that seems to be a common thing where the hips, based on the evidence we have at this stage, it seems that the hip bone density is perhaps more amenable to exercise than the lumbar spine, or at least improves first or improves more significantly than lumbar spine. So that is a pretty common thing, that the hip has gone up a bit and the lumbar spine has gone down. We can say focus on the positives. It's great that the hip has improved. 1.2% is a really significant and meaningful improvement in the hips.
And the reality is that we just don't know enough to be able to say doing this will improve the bone density in your lumbar spine.
So we don't know which exercises.
We don't know that certain exercises will target the bone density in your lumbar spine more so than other areas.
Now we think that all the classic things you members do in our program, squats, deadlifts, standing overhead presses with weight, etc., are all loading your spine and your lumbar spine, and loading those bones is what we want to improve their bone density. So some combination of all of those is our best guess at what would help. But we just don't have that nuanced research yet. Hopefully in the future we will learn more about this. But we don't know exactly which exercises are best to target lumbar spine bone density. So what can you focus on? I said to Denise in the comments, the main thing to focus on is consistently doing your strength training at least twice per week. Making sure to challenge yourself with heavier weights. The heavier weight that you can comfortably and confidently tolerate is going to be the best for increasing that loading. and ensuring your nutrition is good. So protein, calcium and vitamin D all need to be good for bones. And lastly, discussing bone density medication with your doctor if you're not already on it. So those are the things you can control, and those are the things that are going to put you in the best position.
Yeah. And I think it's also worth noting that the exercises that you're doing, they're, in our programs, the deadlifts and the squats, they are the exercises that were used in the research that has shown increases in bone density. So, as Brodie said, just keep doing what you're doing, and celebrate the win that you did have, because that is an amazing achievement to increase your bone density from your strength training. Yeah.
Wonderful. So we hope that helped Denise and anyone else who was interested in that bone density. One more question that we had pre-sent in that I thought worth sharing as well. Trish asked, can you suggest how to achieve push-ups? Since I injured my shoulder, I feel restricted with push-ups. I'm able to do them on the back of a chair or up against the wall, but I don't have full range when trying to do the push-ups down on the floor. My shoulder has completely healed and I have full range of movement.
Okay, so the reason that you're likely having trouble getting through the full range of motion on the floor is because they require a greater degree of strength. Yep. So it's a strength issue, it's not a range of motion issue.
Yep.
So we actually we're going to pop some links to some videos that
we'll just do this YouTube one.
Brodie is going to pop it in now in terms of a push-up progression, because it is 100% possible to improve your ability to do push-ups, and it's like a scale, you know, and it's a matter of finding the right entry point, what's challenging for you now, and then being consistent and building upon that to hopefully work your way up the scale towards the more difficult versions of the push-up.
Yeah, so I just shared that link in the comments. It's a recent YouTube video we did all about the push-up, showing you all different versions, troubleshooting, etc. The main answer, the main way to get better at those push-ups, as Alicia was saying, is basically do the hardest version you can, work at it consistently, and it will gradually progress and improve with time. If it's a real goal of yours, Trish, or for anyone else, you could do extra push-ups throughout the week. So in our programs, we recommend a minimum of two strength training sessions per week. Mm-hmm. Some people are doing 3 or even more. But let's say you were just doing your 2 and you really wanted to get better at push-ups, you could do some extra push-ups on, say, 2 other days. So it could be its own mini workout, 5 minutes, do a little bit of a warm-up, and then just do 3 or 4 sets of challenging push-ups. You could do that another 2 days a week, and then those muscles are getting a lot more volume, a lot more repetitions throughout the week of training them and loading them. And provided it's all feeling okay, the shoulder's tolerating it, and your muscles are, recovering in time, that's going to help you progress even faster, because more volume per week will help you progress faster.
Yeah, and I'm just rereading your question. You just say you can do them on the back of a chair, but then you're having a problem doing them on the floor, and I assume that you're doing them on your knees on the floor. If you can find something in between, so rather than doing them on the floor, if you have a stable object, maybe even the base of a couch, where you would sit on a couch and you do it, and you have your knees on the floor, maybe a cushion underneath your knees, and you're doing a push-up at that height, and then you can slowly lower the object that you're doing them on until you get down to being able to do them with your hands on the floor and your knees. Yeah, wonderful.
Okay, good. That's it for our questions for today. I'll just remind everyone that we've got lots of these sorts of questions. We have videos on our YouTube page that are answering and addressing these. So check out our YouTube page if you haven't already. We've been putting more work into that lately and putting some good content up there. So subscribe to that, follow our Facebook page and things. To all our lovely members, keep doing all the great things you're doing. That's it I can see for comments. Yeah, Gay, your question about tennis elbow, if you want to resend it via email, we potentially missed that, or we'll follow that up with you and find where it is and check that out next week. In the meantime, there is a tennis elbow video on our YouTube page, which I'll share in the comments as well.
All right, well, we hope you enjoy the show. That's it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Bye.